I'm here today to show off some mad science that I've been working on. It's a side project, it's a little bit rough around the edges, but I think it'll be pretty cool. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm McConnell. As Luke said, I'm in charge of DevOps at Node.js. I'm a minor Node.js and LibUV contributor. I also happen to be a retired actor and a retired bartender. And as a number of people who told me last week in Dublin, I'm also a wee bit mad. I'm a self-taught programmer completely. I'm really stubborn, especially when someone tells me I can't do things. I'm amused by technical disasters and giant bugs, and I've got a very limited amount of patience for things that are more complicated than they need to be. I like making things easier, and I like trying crazy new things to see what happens and what else we can do with it. So, at Node.js, we try to do everything in Node. As much as we possibly can, as much as it possibly makes sense to, we try to do everything we can in Node. And sometimes there are things you just can't do, sometimes there are things you just shouldn't do. But we like to prove that empirically and then move on to other platforms. Now, as much as I stand here and I like talking about how Node is the best thing ever and it's the best thing in persistence programming since the discovery of caffeine, when we run commands on remote servers, we still need bash. It's still the language of the shell, it's still there. And bash is archaic. It's been around for a really long time. The syntax is weird, as most of us know. It's the kind of thing where you'll get one character wrong and you'll have to spend 10 minutes in man pages wondering what the hell you did wrong. And it's really just neckbeard country at the end of the day. Like, it really just is. And this, as I spend time thinking about this and considering things, I keep asking myself, time and time again, what if we didn't need bash? What if I could replace the whole thing and make a shell that actually functioned in Node? I certainly believe in JavaScript and all things. So, what would it take at this point to build a shell in Node? We think about the basic functionality for me out of a shell. It'll run basic built-in commands, it'll run arbitrary processes for you, pass arguments to, things like that, give you some, redirections, some piping, and stuff like that. And in the process of going over this, I'm like, well, Node has a REPL. That's sort of like a shell, except without the shell stuff, so let's see what we can do hacking the REPL. Now, as we all know, one of the better things about Node, one of the things that's worth using is all of the asynchronous I/O. Async is awesome, as we all know. But the problem is that you don't really want to do everything asynchronously. If you're trying to stop, you've got a shell. Node's child process APIs are asynchronous. So let's say you spawn a text editor, and you've got your Node process that's supposed to be the shell. You spawn your text editor. All of a sudden, there are two different processes, both listening for the keystrokes. It lasts about 4 seconds. So async is awesome, except when it really, really isn't. So this is probably the first hurdle I have to solve here. Now, fortunately, if you spend as much time doing crazy systems things as I do, there are utilities around to help you with stuff like this. WaitPid, for example, is a WaitPid system call. In C, this means, okay, I want you to wait for this child process to finish, and I want you to tell me the status. You can set it up to be either blocking or non-blocking. Node, in fact, uses it, but it uses it in a non-blocking way, so the process gets to run in the background, everything's cool, stuff like that. But you can also configure it to block. So, with that said, I went and made an add-on, a Node WaitPid binder. Blocking is usually terrible. For example, if you start a child process from inside of a request handler in an HTTP server, you're doing it wrong. But sometimes you need things to do it, so let's now open source. The first thing I'm going to open source. So here's WaitPid.
Always use a galaxy.
Yep, I forgot about that. Thank you. Lost track of my mouse cursor here, but I think I'm just taking it. No, where's the mouse cursor? There it is. There you go. Open source for the win. Get back to this now. All right. So, open source the WaitPid binding. it allows us to block and wait for a child process to finish. And I'd like to go on a small tangent here. Now, I always choose to use the MIT license when I open source things. And Isaac's made big points out of pushing the BSD license. And I would like to address for a moment why I use MIT and not BSD. Isaac says his only reason for really doing it is, Berkeley represent. So, East Coast represent. MIT license, guys, come on. At any rate, back to the matter. So what do we actually got here? So I'm talking about hacking a REPL with blocking child processes. So I've got a REPL with an exec VP fallback. I've got some replacement shell built-ins. I've got a way to block and wait for a small child to finish. Now this is a start, and it's a pretty cool toy. But there's a lot more that can happen. There's a lot more places that this can go. So the first part of the dream, the first part of where I'd really like to go with this, is making Node and a lot of the popular bash syntax somewhat interchangeable. Not so much in terms of the language itself, like the loops and the weird conditionals and stuff like that, but the shell operators, like pipes, backticks, and stuff like that. So, in working on advancing this dream, the first thing that needs to be done is choosing a particular subset of bash to work with. Now, as I just said, no loops or conditionals. We've already got that in JavaScript. JavaScript is easier for everyone to learn, so why mess with it? Support backticks and the subshell notation there. Pipes between programs, between streams, things like that, and replacement shell built-ins, because a bunch of things like CD are actually built into bash itself, and you need to replicate that functionality. So, when I got to this point, I enlisted the help of one Mr. Bradley Mack, serious badass. He's another of our Node.js systems programmers. He's a very, very smart guy. And he helped me put something together for basically changing up the way that JavaScript gets parsed in the REPL. We use several things to do this. One is the Esprit module that I think was mentioned earlier today. The other is a module called Spoon. This is made by Fedor and Dutney, one of our Node.js guys. It is a JavaScript transpiler. It compiles JavaScript to JavaScript. So basically, we go in and we change the way that the JavaScript gets parsed, and then, transpile it back to itself. And they're, Darby dragons. It's a bit of a messy thing, and it gets pretty complicated sometimes. But at any rate, it's demo time. Oops. So. So, first of all, we've got ourselves a basic node up here. I can, console. Oh, I see. Sure, just a second. Okay. So, can't see the mouse pointer. This is kind of a problem. There it is. Console.log. Cool. We can run some JavaScript. So now we got some, how about console.log? Run some backticks. I have config-a. Oh, look at that. My network configuration. That's neat. You can't usually get that in the REPL. And then what else have we got kicking around here? I can do something silly like process.standard in, pipe process.standard out. And this is a whole lot of fun, because if you notice, everything's coming in twice, because every letter I press is getting typed back to itself. Not all sorts useful, but it is pretty neat. Yeah, that's obviously the command I found. So, yeah. Those are some of the basic little tricks it can do so far. There are, it's definitely a little rough around the edges. There are plenty of ways to break it, and it is definitely in need of some expansion. But here we are. Only thing left to do is ship it. This could be a little bit less awkward, but that's my fault. Make public. NSH. Yep. All right. That's open source too now. I published both that and the weight bid binding to NPM earlier because I didn't trust the network. Otherwise, I'd do that too, for sure. At any rate, there's that. So, back to the slides. All right. So here's the thing. There's plenty of ways to break it. The error handling is not perfect. Please, all of you, break this code. I want this to hit a point where it's stable. I want this to hit a point where we can use it, and I want this to hit a point where I can use it on thousands of servers in production without losing any sleep at night. I lose plenty of sleep at night. It's really not that much fun. So please, please break this code. And when you do, I accept pull requests. I would love nothing more than to make a community project out of this, or another shell. It doesn't really matter. I just really like this idea of having a shell where you can use JavaScript instead of old archaic shell languages, instead of strange subsets of things. Everyone knows a little JavaScript. It's easy to learn. The hard parts of JavaScript are not that hard to pick up. It doesn't take you that long. So that's I just think JavaScript is good for this kind of thing. More now. This is only a certain, it's still a fairly young project at this point. One of the biggest things I would like to see added to it at this point is a larger subset of Bash. I would love to see more of the language self-supported, and I would love to see a proper parser implemented. What we've done with Esprima and Spoon, they're both vendored. We've had to make changes to both of them. It's a bit of a hack. It's a bit of a big hack, as a matter of fact. So I would love to see more of Bash and more shell things added to it. I would also like to see more customization. In Bash, you can change the prompt. You've got the PS1 you can change. You've got your Bash RC and your Bash profile where you can add all of these kinds of things. And we haven't built any of that yet, and it's necessary in a properly functioning shell, I think. And, yeah. So, another thing, the place that this is really going in my mind, the really crazy mad science part of this, is that I want to add a gossip protocol to this shell. I want to make it so that you can configure a series of hosts and type a command and just have it propagate by itself, have the machine spread it to other machines across a network of any size. So you don't have to worry about distributing those commands. You don't have to think about any of that. You just have shells on as many machines as you can possibly handle running the same command because you sent it to one of them. I would really love to see that. One command in one shell propagating across a network. This is one of the things that I think Node could be really great with. And, yeah. On the day that this happens, I think Node will win the internet. I got through this a little faster than I planned on. That's actually all I've got.